Hello everyone, and welcome to English Pod. Tonight's story is a chilling murder mystery set in a quiet neighborhood where no one expected anything terrible to happen. But sometimes darkness hides in the most ordinary places. This is the story of the murder in Maple Lane. Grab a seat, settle in, and join me as we unravel a mystery with secrets, lies, and a shocking reveal of the killer. James Henderson was a 55-year-old businessman who had only been living in Maple Lane for a few months. Although he was quiet and kept to himself, he was known for his wealth and strange, mysterious habits. Neighbors noticed he would often stay up late, lights on in every room, and sometimes people heard him talking to someone, though they never saw anyone else enter the house. Then, one cold October night, James Henderson was found dead in his living room, a single stab wound to the heart. The body was discovered by Mrs. Thompson, James's next-door neighbor, who noticed his front door was open on her way home. She found him lying motionless on the floor and, in a panic, called the police. When officers arrived, they found no signs of a break-in and nothing seemed to be stolen. It looked as if James had let his killer in willingly. The mystery was just beginning, and the neighbors were shaken. They all wondered, who would want to kill a quiet man like James Henderson? The police soon learned that James had a nephew named Mark, who had a difficult relationship with his uncle. Mark was the only family James had left, and he stood to inherit a large sum of money from James's estate. Mark had recently been seen arguing with his uncle in town, and some neighbors heard shouting from inside the house just a week before the murder. When questioned, Mark claimed he was upset about personal matters, but would never harm his uncle. The police were suspicious, but they needed more evidence. Sarah was Mr. Henderson's housekeeper, and had been working for him since he moved to Maple Lane. People described her as quiet, reliable, and always professional. However, when detectives looked into Sarah's past, they discovered something surprising. She had worked for James before, years ago, when he lived in another town. She'd suddenly quit that job and vanished, only to reappear and work for him again in Maple Lane. Sarah said she needed the job, but her return seemed too convenient. Did she have something to hide? While searching the house, the detectives found a hidden letter in James's office. It was an unsigned note that read, "You owe me. You can't run forever." The letter hinted at a dark secret in James's past and suggested he might have had more enemies than anyone realized. When the police showed the letter to the housekeeper, Sarah turned pale and admitted she'd seen it before but hadn't wanted to tell anyone. This new clue left detectives questioning who else James might have wronged, and if his past had finally caught up with him. Mr. Clark, James's friendly neighbor, had offered to help James with odd jobs and sometimes visited him in the evenings. Many people saw him as the kind, helpful type. But in their interviews, detectives noticed something odd. Mr. Clark seemed nervous when talking about James. Eventually, he admitted he and James had a financial dispute. Clark had loaned James a large amount of money that he never repaid. Was Mr. Clark's helpful nature just a cover? Could this financial tension have pushed him to murder? After analyzing the letter, detectives found a single fingerprint that didn't belong to James, Sarah, or Mark. Surprisingly, it belonged to Mr. Clark. When questioned, Mr. Clark became defensive and eventually admitted he'd written the letter as a warning, frustrated with James for not repaying the debt. However, he swore he hadn't killed him and claimed he'd simply left the letter as a way to scare him. Detectives realized there was more to Sarah's connection with James than she admitted. They discovered that James had once been involved in a shady business deal that had ruined Sarah's family financially. She had quietly returned as his housekeeper, hoping to get revenge. The night of the murder, she confronted him, and in the heat of the moment, she stabbed him. Sarah confessed, admitting that she'd taken the job with the intention of making him pay for her family's suffering. The shocking truth was finally revealed. Sarah, the quiet housekeeper, had been hiding a deep resentment, waiting for her moment of revenge. This story reminds us that we never truly know what's in someone's heart, and that people sometimes hide their true intentions behind a mask. Thank you for listening to this episode of English Pod. Join us next time for another mystery, and remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.